The Mets won again. Everybody else in the race lost. It is a great day to be a Mets fan as the streak has now reached 9 games.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at FinkelsteinRyan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Well, the winning streak stayed alive on Saturday. Early on in the game, things weren't going great for the Mets. They were no hit through the first 4 innings. It was not until Jose Iglesias hit a double with 2 outs in the 5th that the Mets got their first hit. But one big rally and some great pitching, and guess what? The Mets continue to climb the standings. The Braves lost. The Diamondbacks lost. The Padres lost. Even the Phillies lost. The Mets, the one team that won in that NL pennant race today, and it feels really, really good. But getting back to the specifics of the game on Saturday, again, there was not a lot of offense for the Mets early in this game. Jacob Junis was no hitting them. But Jose Quintana was matching Junis at every turn, and particularly thanks to some unbelievable defense up the middle. We got some bad news today. Jeff McNeil is out for the season, or at least the regular season. I'll talk about that a little bit more in the final segment today. But what that does mean for the Mets is Jose Iglesias is going to be playing pretty much every single inning at second base. The only other backup infielder on the roster right now is Pablo Reyes, and I don't think the Mets are going to be trying to get him into too many games unless they need to. So Iglesias is going to be your starting second baseman, Vientos your starting third baseman, and that's the way they're going to roll it out from this point on. And I'll tell you what, if there's one silver lining, it is a very small one, because again, as we'll talk about in the final segment, losing Jeff McNeil is not a good thing for this team. But the slight silver lining is you get to watch Jose Iglesias and Francisco Lindor up the middle. And I got to tell you, in my lifetime, I'm about to turn 29 next week. Actually, a week from yesterday, as you're all listening to this, a week from today. In my lifetime, there's never been a better double play combination that I've watched than Francisco Lindor and Jose Iglesias. I thought that at times with Francisco Lindor and Luis Guillorme, but Jose Iglesias is even a different level. And we saw that in this game. A ridiculous turn in the second inning where Jose Quintana walks the leadoff man. You always say those leadoff walks come to kill you. It almost turned into a big inning because if Jose Iglesias doesn't make the diving stop, that's a hit. There's 2 runners on. There's nobody out. It might be first and third. But instead, Iglesias makes a diving stop, quick spin, turn, throw to Lindor, throws a little bit low. Lindor easily digs it out and fires it to first in time. And guess what? Double play a ball, 2 outs instead of 2 on. And Quintana able to get through that inning. Third inning, leadoff single he gives up. Then Jonathan India hits a rope to the right of Francisco Lindor on a hop. He makes a great play on a backhand. Quick throw to second to get, I believe it was Jake Fraley or TJ Friedel. Might have been Friedel. One of those guys that was flying down towards second. He also beat out an infield single to get on first. But Lindor makes that play. The throw beats whoever the runner was. I don't recall exactly. I think it was Friedel. Regardless, the throw beats him to second. They get Jonathan India at first for another huge double play. And that really helped Quintana, who other than that, really sort of cruised throughout this game. All told, he went 6 2/3, allowed 5 hits, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts. Fourth inning, he did give up a leadoff double and didn't have a double play ball that helped him navigate his way through it, but he got a pop out. There was then a wild pitch that put the runner on third base. He got a comebacker, looked the runner back to third, got a ground out to Pete Alonso, and again, tight-roped his way through it and got out of all of these jams. And then the 6th inning, there was only 1 inning where the Mets got a rally, but that was enough for them to win this game, and it was Harrison Bader who came through. This is the marking of a great team. When the guy that's marred in a long slump is the one that comes through and puts your team on the board with an opposite field homer, his first opposite field homer of the season. That starts a rally. Francisco Lindor had a bad day at the plate, still was able to draw a walk, so his hitting streak ends, I believe it was 16, but the on-base streak continues to 35, breaking Pete Alonso's franchise record for the longest on-base streak in a single season. And now he's got his sights set on John Olerud at 47 games from a on-base streak that continued from a previous season into the new one. Lindor's got a chance here with enough games to grab that record by the end of the season, but obviously that is the least of his worries. He's just trying to get his team in the playoffs. And in this instance, after the home run from Bader, he gets on. Brandon Nimmo gets hit by a pitch, so you have 2 runners on, nobody out. Mark Vientos pops out. Pete Alonso, who all of a sudden looks like he's going through another slump, he at least got a base hit in a big moment, getting a ground ball up the middle to drive in 1. Jesse Winker flies out, but then JD Martinez comes through with the 2-out knock, an RBI double that drives in both Nimmo and Pete Alonso, who scored from first base, which was really impressive. Pete can run, man. He really can. I don't know if we've talked about this on the show, if I've mentioned it, but I honestly think maybe a straight line race he wouldn't win, but from first to home, there's no doubt in my mind that Pete Alonso would trounce Mark Vientos in a foot race. When he starts moving, the big man can fly. Maybe not fly, but I like to watch him run. Regardless, that gave the Mets a 4-0 lead. That's all they needed. Again, Quintana got them through 6 2/3. He gave up a base hit at that point, and it was an infield hit, one where Mark Vientos made a great stop on a backhand, going away, trying to make the throw. He just didn't give Pete Alonso a easy enough hop. It was too much of an in-between hop, and Pete just couldn't handle it. So a throwing error from Vientos allows the runner to get to second. Adam Ottavino comes in, doesn't even pay Santiago Espinal any mind, so he's still third base. But Ottavino gets the strikeout, gets out of that inning, closes the book for Jose Quintana, who ends up picking up the 100th win of his career, the first Colombian-born pitcher to ever get to 100 wins. He also lowered his ERA in the season to 4.09. There is a world here down the stretch, if Quintana can string together a couple more good starts, where the New York Mets might get through this season with 160-plus innings from Jose Quintana, Sean Manaea, and Luis Severino, where all of them pitch to a sub-4. If that happens, those 3 guys, I mean, regardless if it happens or not, the Mets owe their season to those 3 guys and the consistent stability they've brought to this rotation. But, man, if that happens, if you would have told me that on opening day, that would blow my mind. So incredible stuff from Quintana, who went through a rough stretch not that long ago and has really settled himself back in. And the bullpen was great tonight. After Ottavino, Danny Young comes on for the 8th, strikes out 2, perfect frame. Edwin Diaz pitches in the 9th. I know fans probably were upset about this. It's a 4-0 game. Why pitch Edwin Diaz? Here's what I'll say. Edwin Diaz has looked sharper over the past week and a half here than he has all season. All of a sudden, he's lighting up the radar gun again. And he has said he likes to pitch. I am not going to quibble with Carlos Mendoza's decisions as long as Edwin Diaz looks sharp. Now, granted, in this outing, he hit a batter and gave up a hit, but he got his way through it, put up another 0. To me, it made sense only in the fact that you wanted to lock down this win, make sure you win the series. That's still the most important thing here. And he had already warmed up, so if the game goes a little bit more sideways in that 9th inning with someone else on the mound, now you're going to Edwin Diaz in a more stressful situation. Let him close it out. He's probably not going to be available on Sunday, but you know what? You got Luis Severino on the mound. You should have Phil Maton, Reed Garrett, Ryan Stanek, Huascar Brazaban. You'll have arms, and hopefully the Mets can still keep this winning streak going. But a great game altogether. You've won 9 in a row. You gain ground on everybody, as we'll talk about in the next segment. And again, with Sevy on the mound, you got a chance to make this a 10-game winning streak, one that very well could be the stretch that we look back on that propelled the New York Mets into the playoffs. And this is a fun team that could even make a run when they get there. So nothing but good vibes right now at Citi Field. And I want to talk about what this run has meant to this team. So we'll go through all of that in just a minute. First, though, quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. There are only 8 more games left at Citi Field this season unless the Mets make it to October, and they need your help. Get out, go to the ballpark. It is a crazy environment at Citi Field right now. You want to be there, and Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. and it's the place to go for last-minute tickets. If you're listening right now in the morning, you can still get out to the game this afternoon, and with Game Time's Game Time Picks, you're going to get tickets for your favorite live events even easier because Game Time Picks will filter out the fluff and show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. If you're an everyday listener of the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me. Anytime news breaks in the Mets, you can ask me questions anytime, take part in our Locked On Mets signed photo giveaways, and you get the line graphic sent to your phone each day so you know the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. And speaking of our Locked On Mets insiders, I have to share a story with you all today that I learned from one of our insiders. His name is Brian, and he sent me some text messages today to tell me what's been going on in his life. Brian just had a son. His boy's name is Ezra. He was born on August 29th. Throughout the time where his wife was pregnant, the two of them would listen to Locked On Mets together, and now Ezra has joined in on that tradition. And think for a second about what has happened since Ezra was born on August 29th. The New York Mets have not lost a game. The kid's undefeated. It's insane. So Ezra is who we had to thank for this incredible winning streak by the New York Mets. So just a really cool story I learned today. Honestly did. It made my day, my week, my month, really heartwarming stuff. So thank you, Brian, for sharing your story with me. I'm humbled that I'm part of your family's life in this way and that I have a day one listener, literally. So shout out to you, Ezra. I hope that you tune in for years to come. Now let's talk about this winning streak because I foreshadowed this a little bit. And I want to play a clip from an old episode of Locked On Mets here so we can reflect on what this team has accomplished because I did a podcast on August 27th. It's titled, Can the Mets Win 90-plus games to make the playoffs? And I was doing the math for you all about where everybody was, how many games the Padres would have to win to get to 90 and the Diamondbacks and the Braves. And through that process, I broke down why this team needed a winning streak. Let's listen back to this old episode of Locked On Mets, couple-minute clip here from August 27th. If the number the Mets had to get to is 90 wins, that would mean they have to go 22-9 down the stretch. That's going to be really tough to do. Let's just say the Mets, they have 10 series left. Let's say they win 2 games every series, which would mean that they'd win every single series except for their 4-game set against the Phillies. So if they were to do that, that's 20 wins. That only gets them to 88-74. Now, I'm not saying this to discourage you and say the Mets can't make the playoffs. They can. But if they're going to do it, winning every series, as great as that is, that might not be enough. What this team needs more than anything else, they need a winning streak. That's what the New York Mets need to do at some point here. And if you look at their season so far, they had a 6-game winning streak in April, which came to an end after Francisco Alvarez went down with his injury. They had a 7-game winning streak in June. That was their best winning streak of the season. And they had 2 5-game winning streaks in July. But only 4 times this season when the Mets have won 5 games in a row. They either have to do what they did in July, so put together 2 separate 5-game winning streaks, which means you win a series, you sweep a series, which could happen this week. Let's just say the Mets drop the first game, win the second 2 or the final 2 against the Diamondbacks and sweep the White Sox. That'd be a 5-game winning streak, right? You got to take advantage when you do get those bad teams in your schedule. And at some point, you got to go on a run. Beating the Diamondbacks is the first step for the New York Mets. Handling your business against the White Sox is the next one. Then you got the Red Sox. Then you got the Reds. This is a part of the Mets schedule that I do think they can take advantage of. They're not playing awful teams the whole way through. There's only one in the White Sox, but it's a pretty bad team. And then you have teams that are going to be competitive, the Red Sox and the Reds. The Reds are a sub-500 team, but they can beat you in a series. The Red Sox are above 500. Those are tougher teams, but teams the Mets can handle. they have to string together wins at some point. The time is now. Because again, you might have to go 22-9 down the stretch. Now, the math on that changes if you go through a winning streak, though. So, the math on that changes if you go on a winning streak. Guess what? Since I recorded that show, the New York Mets are 10-1 in their last 11 games. So, if they want to get to 90 wins at this point, all they got to do is go 12-8. That sounds a lot more manageable than 22-9. And it's crazy how that all came together in that way. I also think it's crazy I'm wearing the same shirt that I wore on that show. And I'm also thankful that I finally got a haircut. But regardless, it's been a great run for this team. If you think back at where they were going into that series against the Diamondbacks, this is after they lost that game on the Jackson Merrill walk-off to the Padres. The New York Mets at the time were 3 games back of the Braves. There were 6 games back of the Padres, 7 games back of the Diamondbacks. They're only a half a game back of the Diamondbacks now. Across this span of 11 games for the Mets where they went 10-1, the Braves went 6-5, the Padres went 6-5, the Diamondbacks went 4-8. So the Mets gained 4 games on the Braves and the Padres. They're now a game up on the Braves. They're only 2 games back from the Padres. And they gained 6.5 games on the Arizona Diamondbacks. And again, are only a half game back from the second wild card spot. That's crazy stuff. Also, by the way, the Phillies lost today as well. So the Mets gained some ground there. The Phillies have gone 8-3 during the same stretch. So I know that some fans are already starting to set their sights up to the Phillies in the standings. The Mets do have 7 games left against Phillies. So if they took them all, with where they're at right now, 7 games back in the division, that would put them, squarely even. But that's a tall task to say, go ahead, sweep the Phillies, who are actually playing better baseball lately. Sweep them twice in the final couple weeks. It can happen, but that would be one of the most remarkable Septembers that the Mets have ever had, probably the most. And Lindor should be the unanimous MVP if that happens, and amongst other things. But what you have to think about right now is where the Mets were. 7 games back of the Diamondbacks. At that point in time when I recorded that show, it looked like the Braves were the only team within reach. But as I said then, and as it's proven out now, a winning streak changes the math. And the longer they extend this winning streak, the more that math changes. You finish off this sweep of the Reds, you go to Toronto and you handle business there. All of a sudden, what we talked about was a 12-8 stretch that the Mets had to go on to get to 500, or not to get to 500, to get to 90 wins. Now all you got to do is go 8-8 in the final 16 games when you play the Phillies 7 times, the Braves 3 times, and the Brewers 3 times. Now, the Mets at this point, you don't think that far ahead. You handle business day in, day out like they've been doing. And it just becomes whoever's in front of them, that's the next team to topple off. So they're ahead of the Braves by a game now. Great. Let's see them widen that gap. You're half a game back from the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks play the Astros again on Sunday to close out that series. They're going to try to avoid getting swept. And I think they have a 2-game set against the Rangers, but over their next couple weeks, they're going to play the Brewers 2 times. So they have 7 games against a really good Brewers team. The Diamondbacks can beat them, but there's a chance some more losses are going to come in. And I think if there's one of these teams that might fall out of this race, it could very well be the Diamondbacks because their schedule is a lot tougher than the Braves, but you never know. The Mets just got to keep doing what they've been doing here, keep winning these games, keep winning these series. And at this point, they don't have to have some crazy winning streak from here on out. They did the hard work. Now, win series after series after series. But when you're playing these bad teams, you can stock up some wins. So if you do go into Philly next weekend and you lose a hard-fought series, it's not the end-all be-all. Because guess what? You still have the upcoming series here after this one against the Blue Jays. And after that series in Philly, you got a 3-game set at home against the Nationals. So the Mets just have to keep on focusing day in, day out on the task at hand. And when they have a bad team in front of them, they got to beat that bad team. Hopefully, Luis Severino can do that on Sunday, and maybe the Mets can stockpile some more wins in Toronto. But the Mets did get dealt a tough blow today because Jeff McNeil is out for the season. So what does that mean for the New York Mets from this point on? Who's going to replace him? How are they going to manage this roster? I'll talk about all of that in just a minute. First, though, another word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little bit different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon at a market game. Again, this is for all FanDuel customers. All you have to do is bet $5 and you will get that 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV to watch every Sunday afternoon at a market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports by checking out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Our goal is to get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of the season, so I appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. So let's talk about Jeff McNeil. We spent some time on this on yesterday's show, but we ended up getting the official news today. Jeff McNeil is out for the rest of the regular season. He has a fractured wrist. He'll be out for 4 to 6 weeks. The earliest he can be back is the NLDS, and that is best case scenario. I think more likely you might be looking at more the NLCS. He said it himself. If he comes back and he's playing this year, it's probably a really good thing for the New York Mets because that means they've made a deep run. Now, at one point this season, losing Jeff McNeil would not have been a big deal. There was times this season where fans were campaigning for him to get DFA'd or to get traded. But Jeff McNeil showed his value after the All-Star break. He really turned his season around. Since the All-Star break, he's hitting .289, .376 on base, .547 slug. That is Jeff McNeil numbers, if not better than Jeff McNeil numbers throughout his career. 7 home runs, 12 doubles, a .923 OPS. He has the second best OPS on the Mets behind Lindor since the All-Star break. It's been a crazy run here for Jeff McNeil. And now, unfortunately, an up and down season most likely comes to an end, or at least is put on pause, and we'll see if he can get back in the race again, if everything breaks right for him and for this club. The question now is what happens? And the answer is very simple, as we already talked about earlier, and as I spoke about on yesterday's show. Iglesias is just an everyday player now. It's that simple. He will play every single inning at second base from here on out. That's what the Mets are going to do. Pablo Reyes is on the roster. If the Mets wanted to go to infield defense late and they want to take Mark Vientos out, all right, Pablo Reyes can play some third. But Jose Iglesias and Francisco Lindor will be there up the middle every single game. And because of that, the Mets can get by here. But their depth took a major hit because we've seen the value of being able to put Jeff McNeil in right field to start the game. And Iglesias at second. And then late in the game, if you want to put Tyrone Taylor in for defense, you can slide Iglesias to third, bring McNeil into the dirt, play some second base, close out that game. Jeff McNeil can start in left field if you want to. And it changes so much for this team where you have a left-handed bat in an outfield that doesn't have a lot of those. It's Brandon Nimmo and Jesse Winker. So Jeff McNeil gave you a third outfield bat from the left side and a left-handed infielder that had a pseudo platoon with Jose Iglesias at second base. Obviously, Iglesias can hit against either side, but he's definitely been better against lefties. And the Mets have been able to sort of prevent him from getting overexposed. There's a reason why Iglesias has a batting average over 300, and a lot of it's just due to the fact that he's having a great season, but also shielding him from some bad matchups has been of great benefit for him. And he's really thrived in that type of a role. Moving into next year, I think having both of those guys on the roster again could make a lot of sense for the New York Mets. Bringing Iglesias back, and Jeff McNeil is under contract, and I think he showed you, even in a down season, he could always find it again, and his defensive versatility makes him a valuable player to this roster regardless. Now you lose him, and it's not to say the Mets can't get by without him. They have a very deep team right now. The outfield can certainly get by without Jeff McNeil, and Iglesias can be your starting second baseman. But you now don't have a backup infielder that you like. So the question is, How do the Mets replace him? What do they do on this roster? When it happened, the first thing on every single fan's mind was, okay, Acuna's coming up, right? We're finally going to get to see the top prospect, Luisangel Acuna, Ronald Acuna Jr.'s little brother. He's going to be parachuted in to a pennant race. Let's see what he can do. In some respects, sure, the fan in me gets that. If I find out on Sunday morning that Luisangel Acuna is the guy promoted, I'll be excited to see what he does and whatever limited exposure he gets. But you have to think about the playing time that Acuna would get. What role does he have? He would serve a very similar role to Pablo Reyes, the guy they just chose over him to make this roster. They added Pablo Reyes onto the roster when Acuna was already on the 40. And that says a lot because they felt that Acuna needed to develop more in Syracuse. He has not been swinging the bat well. And Pablo Reyes is a guy who's got big league experience. If you're talking about a very limited role, sometimes it's better to have someone that isn't in awe of every big league ballpark they walk into. So bringing up Acuna to still play a limited role, I just don't see it. And sure enough, he was batting leadoff in Syracuse after this news. You know who was not in the lineup? The guy I told you would come up on yesterday's show, and that's DJ Stewart. I said it on Saturday's edition. I said, if Jeff McNeil goes on the IL, my guess is either DJ Stewart or Jose Azocar is going to come up, and I said it would probably be Stewart. Azocar would give you a speed option in the outfield, but particularly on the bases. But if you think about the function of this roster, we saw a pinch running opportunity, what was it, the first game of this series, I believe, where Tyrone Taylor took that on and stole a base. So they have Tyrone Taylor that can do that. They have Pablo Reyes that can do that. Do they really need another speed defense guy? You would say, well, yeah, look at their infield. Who else is going to play in the infield? Well, if somebody else goes down, they'll go grab somebody. But as presently constructed, you got 3 everyday players in Iglesias, Lindor, and Vientos, and 4 if you talk about Alonso. And beyond that, you got Pablo Reyes to back everybody up. When it comes to the outfield, you got Bader, Taylor, Marte, Nimmo, Winker. So why does DJ Stewart fit into this roster? Because you need another player just to fill the roster out. I don't know how much we see DJ Stewart, but what I do know is the Mets clearly value the at-bats that he gives them because he's gotten these opportunities. And he will put himself in a good hitter's count, and he can still ambush a fastball if he gets one. So, yeah, do I love DJ Stewart anymore? No. Do I think this guy is going to have a huge role down the stretch? No. I think it would be crazy to give him any at-bats over Jesse Winker. But if Jesse Winker was in the game early and they subbed him out for defense, and you end up in a situation where all of a sudden the game gets away from you and it's tied, it's in extras, and you're about to have whoever it is, maybe it's Pablo Reyes is about to hit against a right-handed pitcher, and you could put in DJ Stewart instead, that might be a move you might want to go to. So adding that left-handed bat makes sense to me. I don't think he's going to play much. Ultimately, the result of the Jeff McNeil injury, it's not about Pablo Reyes. It's not about DJ Stewart, Jose Azocar, Mike Brasso, Luke Ritter, whoever you want to talk about on Syracuse right now, or the back end of this bench. Losing Jeff McNeil, it means Jose Iglesias will play every game, every inning at second, and Mark Vientos probably won't be subbed out for defense as much. That's what this means. And then the outfielders, there's just a little more playing time to go around for an outfield group that's already pretty cluttered. So that's what I expect to happen. It might be somebody else. And if it is Acuna, I look forward to watching him try to steal some bases. And I will say also, I think there's a better chance that Luisangel Acuna makes the playoff roster than the roster for the series going into Toronto. And that sounds crazy, but here's my rationale on this. Let's just say the Mets make the playoffs, which you'd need to have a playoff roster. But let's say the Mets make the playoffs. Maybe you don't want to carry Pablo Reyes on that roster. And in that instance, after Acuna has played the entire season at Syracuse, gotten as much development as he can, his season's over. That might be a point where you say, you know what, let's bring him up, and maybe he's a little more explosive for a playoff roster. But do I really think that that is going to change the fortune of the Mets one way or the other? I do not. So it's all about Jose Iglesias at this point, and why not with the way that he has played such a huge role in this team all season long. I think this team can still roll, but it does suck for Jeff McNeil, and this team did get a little bit thinner. I just think it's an injury that they can overcome. And you know what? Maybe Jeff McNeil does end up getting a little more season left, and maybe he gets a big hit in the NLCS or something. We'll just have to wait and see. But that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. I appreciate all of you who tuned into the show. If you're listening on the audio side, follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Goal, again, is to get to 10,000 subscribers by the end of the season. So I appreciate all of you who subscribe. Follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day. And after your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel covering everything the world of sports. Talking about Locked On Sports today with our local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. Find Locked On Sports today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.